Hello, this is Adam with DreamMade Productions. This video is made possible by the very kind donations of viewers like you. Thank you. If you are in a position to help this channel improve quality and grow, please visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Hello! So today I thought we would take a look at some of the G.I. Joe figures I had as a kid, and some other little odds and ends that I used to play with my G.I. Joes. Now, I'm going to start off with some figures I didn't actually have as a kid. In my early 20s, mid-20s, something like that, I found a bag of G.I. Joe figures at a flea market or yard sale or something like that, and I remember buying it for a couple of dollars, and then, you know, they weren't the classic figures that I really wanted, so they were just kind of thrown in this bag and kept in a box for a while. But I figured we'd take a look at that. But first, I did have these figures as a kid. I have some Star Wars figures, really only two. I have the Emperor here and Dengar, the bounty hunter. I don't know where these came from, and I don't have any of the accessories to them. Pretty sure these were bought at a yard sale or something and given to me as a kid. Yeah, as you can see, it's pretty dirty here. The Emperor, Dengar, they kind of got thrown in with G.I. Joe once in a while because these were the only Star Wars figures I had. So, yeah, they collected dust most of the time, which is a shame because I am a big Star Wars fan. I just never had any of the toys really, other than what I've basically shown you with the TIE fighters, and I do have the Millennium Falcon. I'll put a picture of it up here somewhere, but I didn't have the AT-ST and the one TIE fighter, and these two figures were all I had as a kid. The other TIE fighter came later, and the Millennium Falcon came later. So first up, I have a 90s, I believe this is an eel. I am not as big and know that much about the later 90s figures as I do, you know, the classic G.I. Joe figures. This guy, yeah, I didn't have him as a kid, so I never really played with him. And this is kind of why. I mean, he's brightly colored, and it just would not have appealed to me back then. So, can't tell you much about him. Next up, I have this guy. I honestly don't remember. I think I looked up who he was. Snow Job version 3 or some shit. Anyway, I don't remember who he is. This is one of the better of these 90s figures that came in this bag. Other than his orange grenades, he looks pretty decent. So if I would have had this guy as a kid, I probably would have played with him quite a bit. Again, don't know who this guy is, and with that bright orange jumpsuit, don't really care who he is. These just terrible color schemes is what drove me away from G.I. Joe. Looks like he's maybe wearing a bomb disposal suit. Maybe this is tripwire or something. I don't know. Another 90s figure. This one doesn't look too bad. I actually kind of like the yellow on the black. It's one of my favorite, you know, color schemes. Not so much for military, but it doesn't look horrible here. Honestly, is this Duke, or I don't know. I like I said, 90s stuff I just don't know that much about. Didn't have them as a kid. This, as a kid, I probably would have played with some. It is not a horrible figure, but it is certainly a 90s figure. Got another one who I don't know who he is. This one has a play gimmick to it. His arms are spring-loaded, so they chop down. This is probably like a Ninja Viper or a Night Viper or something. Because of his gimmick, he does a torso twist and he has no back peg for a backpack. Yeah, I don't know if I would have played with him much as a kid. I was kind of a fan of the ninjas for a while, but there were so many of them at the end, and I don't know. I did not like the play gimmicks that came out later on in the G.I. Joe line. This is my favorite of the bunch. I don't know if he's late 80s or early 90s. I don't recognize the guy. Like I said, I love G.I. Joe, but really it's the classic G.I. Joe from, 82 to 86 or 87. Once you hit 89 and 90, you really started running into G.I. Joes that I didn't know very well. As a kid, I got into G.I. Joe because of the cartoon. Me and my mom used to watch it. I will still occasionally turn on an episode of it that has not aged as well as I would have liked, but especially the earliest bits of it, the mass device, the weather control thing, the Pyramid of Darkness, those are some of my favorites. Season 1. Season 2 started getting a little weird, and then, by the movie and the Dragonfly Deke miniseries, and then the Deke series itself, I had lost pretty much most of my interest in it. But this guy looks pretty decent. I definitely would have played with him as a kid. And I'm not going to pull everything out, but I have a bag of weapons and stuff, all very 90s, that these figures came with. I think the figures were actually in this bag, and looks like there's a pair of legs in here. Hey, I got a pair of Hooded Cobra Commander legs in the bag here. Anyway, bunch of weapons and stuff from the 90s. Reissues. I have no idea what that is. I think I went through this bag maybe once when I first bought it. Got a random piece of plastic in there. Big gun. And this is definitely one of the things that turned me off to G.I. Joe, was everyone coming with these spring-loaded missile launchers. It just took away from... Wow, what the heck is that thing? It just took away from the realism, and it took away from the specialty of some of the G.I. Joes, like Bazooka. What's the point of someone like Bazooka or Zap when every single G.I. Joe has a missile launcher? Yeah. It's one of the things that drove me away. The bright colors, the gimmicks. Oh, look, got a bat backpack in here. Anyway, so these figures were thrown in this bag, and I bought it. Got a piece of chain in there, and Storm Shadow's second version of Storm Shadow's bow in baby blue for some reason. Anyway, the only good thing to come out of the 90s was really the figure stands. Very few of the figures, especially in the mid-90s once the line started coming to an end, very few of those figures and stuff was I interested in. really it was the 80s and maybe some of the early 90s stuff that was cool. But let's take a look at the G.I. Joes I did have as a kid. Actually, pause that. This is something that I had in my container that I had the G.I. Joes in. This missile, I think, is from Exo Squad. I don't know for certain. It's just something in my head tells me as a kid this was something that I found that I was like, oh, this is the Exo Squad. Even though I didn't have any of the Exo Squad toys. Exo Squad was a really cool show, really ahead of its time in a lot of ways. If you get the chance, check out Exo Squad. This is a ring pop that apparently I ate at some point as a kid, and this gun thing. Again, I have no idea where this came from, but I do remember having this as a kid, and I remember putting this thing together and wearing it. There we go. I'm fat enough now that it only fits on my pinky, but I remember wearing this as a kid, and it was my, gun laser ring thing. And occasionally I would take it off and it would be, on a G.I. Joe vehicle, or, I'd figure out some kind of way to play with it with my G.I. Joes. So, just funny, I found this while I was looking for the figures. Alright, so these are what I used to keep my G.I. Joe figures in. I had this metal Incredible Hulk lunchbox. It looks like it was from 1978. So this predates me. This is what I used to keep the figures themselves in for a long time. Got the Hulk on there. Betty Ross. General Ross, her dad. Doc Samson. Moonstone. Don't remember Moonstone. Remember the Leader and Rhino, though. But yeah, this is what I used to keep the figures in. As you can see, it has a piece of extremely old masking tape with my name, Adam Thomas, on there, and something else that I can't read. Yeah, I have no idea. This probably went with me to school or something at some point. It's the only reason I can think that my name would be in there. But as you can see, the handle's missing. I might have been responsible for that. I don't know. As long as I can remember, the handle's been missing on it. And this is what I kept my G.I. Joe figures in, my little treasures. This G.I. Joe lunchbox here came later. This is from 1586. It must be the part number. But with Sergeant Slaughter and stuff on here, it would have been from the later 80s. This was artwork, promotional artwork that they used on a lot of stuff. I think this pulls back, and there was like two kids hiking over here, and like over here in the larger version was like the Terrordrome and stuff. But this was another lunchbox that I know I took with me to school as a kid. Right there is the masking tape my mom put on with my name on it at some point. And inside, this is where I kept and still keep all of the G.I. Joe weapons and other little things that are easily lost. So looks like there's a missile in here too. The Stinger, backpacks, all kinds of stuff. So I'm not going to drag all this stuff out, but suffice it to say, I have most, if not all, of the weapons and stuff that I had that came with the figures. Some stuff that was given to me as a kid. Some stuff that I got as a kid from yard sales and whatnot. Some stuff that, came with the figures new. So, yep, got a whole box of accessories here. Let's get to the figures. At one time, I had all of the G.I. Joe stuff on display in my home office. That was a long time ago. Seems like a lifetime ago. But for a while, I worked at a jewelry store, and one day they told me to take a bunch of these trays that they had, like necklaces and stuff in, and they got new ones and told me to take a big box of them out back and throw them in the dumpster. So I did. I took that big box out back, walked right by the dumpster, and put them in my car. And I gave some of them away. I kept some of them, but these ones that close are the ones that I ended up keeping the G.I. Joe figures in. So let's open it up and take a look at some of them. As you can see here, there's some G.I. Joes in there. Now, I have never replaced any of the rubber O-rings that are in any of these figures. So as you can see, some have completely dry rotted and are no longer there, like my buddy Flint here. Other ones are actually still in pretty good shape and yeah, hold up pretty well. I have Flint here. This was bought at a yard sale. I remember that. I did not get him new. I have General Hawk here. He could have been one of my first G.I. Joe figures. He is certainly one of the ones that I remember having the earliest of. He may be my very first. I was very young when I got Hawk. Got Beachhead here. His rubber O-ring is failing. Beachhead was one of my mom's favorite G.I. Joes for some reason. This is one that I got new, and I've had him for a very long time. I have Slaughter's Marauder Spirit with broken thumbs. This is another one that I got new. For some reason, I was not as careful with him as I was my other figures, and both thumbs got broken off at some point. I remember this guy because I remember I was good when my mom went to a grocery store and he was like $2 or $3 or something, and my mom, since she promised me if I was really good I would get a surprise, and she bought this guy for me. I have original Storm Shadow. This is one that I got from a yard sale later on. I was lucky enough as a kid that some people that got into the original G.I. Joes towards the end of the 80s, maybe when they were a late teenager, they got some of the originals. They were wanting to sell their collection and buy a car or whatnot. So when I was a kid and these G.I. Joes were no longer on the pegs, a few of the old ones that were, in the show and were obviously my favorites were bought used. A lot of them did not have their gear though, so I don't have Storm Shadow's freaking awesome original backpack, but I did manage to get Storm Shadow. This is 90s Destro, where they remade Destro to harken back to his cartoon, at least in my opinion. I do not have original Destro, and I do not have gold mask Destro, but I was very happy as towards the end of my G.I. Joe phase to have Destro finally in my collection, being that he was such a big part of the show. Honestly, even as a teenager, I would break out the G.I. Joes once in a while and play with them. To this day, sometimes I just want to sit on the floor and play with my G.I. Joes again. I don't so much, I don't. But, there were many hours of playing with these guys. I have Viper. This is another one that was very early for me that I remember being bought new. I think I got this guy for Christmas, and he was played with a lot. I did not have the Cobra Trooper or the Cobra Officer, and never managed to get my hands on them. Those I would have liked over Viper because, you know, they were in the show more, but, you know, Viper was another guy that was in the show quite a bit, and as the generic guy that, you know, G.I. Joes would fight, he got played with a lot. His rubber O-ring is going to fall apart any moment now, so I'm going to put him back down. One of these days I'm going to buy a bunch of rubber O-rings and just replace them all, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. I have Hooded Cobra Commander here. He was a mail-in. I remember getting him as a mail-in. I wanted the original Cobra Commander, but he was long gone by the time I was old enough to really get into G.I. Joe. So, you know, I got Hooded Cobra Commander, and, you know, if you're going to have one and you can't get the original, get Hoodie Coco here. By the way, if you're watching Hooded Cobra Commander 788, you are missed. I hope you come back one day. But if not, enjoy your retirement. Scarlet. You know, got the second version of her here, or 1.5 version, not the straight armed version. This was another one I picked up from a flea market with my mom that we went to, where a guy was selling some of his. Did not get her crossbow or anything, though I had a rubber crossbow for her that was, I don't know where it came from, but so I did have a crossbow to give her, just not hers. What can I say? Scarlet, my favorite of the female G.I. Joes. She was in the original show, and I liked her better than Lady J. Mom likes Lady J better. I like Scarlet better. What can I say? Classic figure. Played with her a lot. Next up, I have Tiger Force Duke. I didn't get the original Duke, even though I asked for him. Later on, I was given Tiger Force Duke, and oh, here it falls apart. And he was played with a lot. I know there's a lot of people out there that hate Duke. I was a kid that watched the show. I love Duke. I understand why people don't like him that are fans of the comic book, that he took Hawk's thunder away from him and stuff. What can I say? I was a kid. I grew up with the cartoon. I like Duke, and when you say G.I. Joe, Duke comes to mind. Finally, in this box, I have a Crimson Guard. This is another one that I got from a yard sale. Probably that same one. I remember there was this big yard sale that me and my mom went to, and this guy had several of the G.I. Joes there, and I got several of them because he was selling them relatively cheap. They were old ones by that point, no longer available in the store, and this is one that I'm pretty sure came from that batch, since I was good helping Mom sell whatever it was we were selling, strawberries or something. Anyway, yeah, Crimson Guard, what can I say? Another one of the RB builders, another guy that was in the original show on occasion. Played with him a lot. Not quite as much as Viper, but yeah. I've thought about cosplaying once in a while. If I can ever lose enough weight to look like a reasonable army guy, I'm thinking I'll get a Crimson Guard outfit. Not get the helmet. I don't quite want to go that far. But maybe have like a beret on or something. Anyway, Crimson Guard, man, he looks awesome. Got the next box here. Let's take a look. We have some mixed figures here. I have an Annihilator who's come apart. Destro's Grenadiers, 90s figure. Actually kind of liked him because he came with the helicopter backpack, which was, you know, different than the jetpack backpack. So I remember asking for this guy and getting him new. Can't say I like the color scheme, but his accessory I thought was pretty cool. And before Hooded Cobra Commander made a thing saying he looks like a duck, I never noticed it as a kid, but yeah, he does look kind of ridiculous. Got Tiger Force Roadblock. Again, I didn't have original Roadblock or any of the classic Roadblocks, so Tiger Force and stuff let me get toys as a kid that I was just too young for when they were originally on the pegs. Played with Roadblock quite a lot, and this was another one of my mom's favorites because, you know, he always talked in rhymes. Got another version of Hawk. I remember wanting him because he had that cool backpack, the fold-out wing backpack. It's in the container over there somewhere. Yeah. Of the 90s figures, this was one of my more favorite ones. It just looked cool, and even though it was ridiculous, it was Hawk, he was cool, and I had to have him, and I got him new as a kid. Next up, I have Alley Viper. Alley Viper was one of my favorite of the newer Cobras, the 90s Cobras. His shield looked fucking awesome. His gun was pretty cool. Yeah, I in one of the rare instances, I don't mind the paint scheme too much. This guy I took as, you know, he's going to be more of like a Cobra cop than he's going to be as a, you know, frontline combatant. So I was more willing to forgive that, and he looked cool. And I think that the second version of him with the Cobra symbol shield looks even cooler. To this day, his shield looks badass, both versions of it. I have Rock and Roll here, 90s. This was before the 90s got too bad. What can I say? Rock and Roll, his massive Gatling guns were cool as a kid. Would have preferred the original, but you know, you had to play with what you could get. This is probably my most valuable figure. This is the Mail Away Ninja Viper. He's still in good shape. He was my stand-in for Storm Shadow for a long time, until that flea market where I got actual Storm Shadow. I would never have guessed that he would be an expensive figure. I've honestly thought about selling him a few times, but I know if I did, I would never get him back. And like I said, these guys were my treasures as a kid. So as much as I would like the money, I have to keep him. I'm not going to sell this G.I. Joe stuff unless I have no choice. This guy I got later as a kid. I honestly, Mercer, I think. I'm not as familiar with him. I think he was one of Slaughter's Renegades or something. Hard to say. Interrogator. Interrogator, I believe that's his name. He came with the big helicopter backpack. Wanted that mostly for the backpack. He does look cool though. He looks intimidating, and yeah, he looks closer to something out of like Star Wars than he looks out of G.I. Joe, but he still looks badass as a Cobra. One of the few 90s figures that I would be like, yeah, this dude looks cool. He looks like a bad guy. Got Flak Viper here. He was one that I got new for Christmas one year. Thought he looked fairly cool. With his anti-air thing, I forgave his crazy looking backpack. Honestly, I wouldn't even use it on him a lot. I would put his gun in his hand and he would just be another Cobra soldier, and that backpack would get flipped upside down and used as a jetpack. I just did not like the spring-loaded nonsense. Got Snake Eyes here. This is a guy I got new. I got him as soon as he came out. I didn't have the first version of Snake Eyes, didn't have the second version of Snake Eyes, but as soon as this guy became available, like all kids, Snake Eyes was a favorite of mine, and my mom picked him up for me, and he was played with a lot. This figure is still a cool version of Snake Eyes. I would have preferred version 1, but this sort of harkens back to version 1, and yeah, just badass. I've got Jinx. I don't remember if I got her new or not. I have her backpack and swords and stuff, so maybe. I don't know. Honestly, I've had her for a long time. I don't remember where I got her from. Probably for Christmas one year. You know, excited for the G.I. Joe movie, and then actually saw it. I've got Overlord here. Got him for Christmas one year. Probably, you know, just because I still liked G.I. Joe, and G.I. Joe, you know, these newer figures were my mom's only choice at that point. Rock Viper, he is all here, just in pieces. Rock Viper, I remember getting him new as a kid for Christmas one year, and I remember asking for him because he looked pretty cool, and I liked the whole Mountaineer thing. One of the better 90s figures, or late 80s figures. Battle Armor Cobra Commander. Honestly, you know, I remember getting him, I remember asking for him, but yeah, it just... This is where G.I. Joe started kind of falling apart for me once they radically changed everything. Storm Shadow as a good guy. Again, he does not look bad. It's just, to me, Storm Shadow is always a bad guy. He was that way in the show. He looks fine. I won't take anything away from him. I did play with him quite a bit as a kid, but normally he was just another ninja, or, you know, another version of evil Storm Shadow. Next up, I have, I believe his name is Skidmark. He's another one that I got later from a yard sale or something. Yeah, played with him quite a bit. Not because I liked his character, but because he was an early one that I got that I didn't know who he was, so he was sort of the stand-in for me. So in some ways, this is my figure, such as it is. I definitely would have chose a different figure, but hey, as a kid, you did what you had to do. I have Saw Viper, the infamous Saw Viper, the guy that killed Doc and several other G.I. Joes, though I did not know that at the time. I got him new, another Christmas present of, hey, I like G.I. Joe. Mom goes out and grabs G.I. Joe figures because the ones that I really wanted weren't on the pegs anymore. Last in this bunch, I have Astro Viper, another one that I got new. Played with him quite a bit because he had that space suit backpack thing. He kind of stood in as just a flyer. Yeah, since he wasn't in the show and I didn't know that much about him, I just sort of played with him. There we go. So I did end up picking up a version 2 Snake Eyes, but this was later. This was when I was a later teenager. I ended up finding him I believe at a yard sale somebody was selling him. I did not have him, and I did not play with him as a kid. I had him when I was like 17, 16, sometime in high school I got my hands on him, and I remember forking over a few dollars just because I went, oh man, a G.I. Joe figure, and it was one of, with Snake Eyes. I bought him and never ended up playing with him. Here we go with, I have another Beachhead. This was another one that was picked up at a flea market or something. I don't remember which one I had first. Probably the other one, because this one's paint is not as worn, and I played with Beachhead a lot because he was one of my mom's favorites and she would actually play with me with him. Next up, I have Cross Country, the driver of the Havoc. And giving things away, I do have the Havoc, and he was bought new, and the Havoc was my main Christmas present one year, and Cross Country came with it new. He got played with quite a bit because I played with the Havoc quite a bit. Have Iceberg. What can I say? It's Iceberg. He was another somewhat early G.I. Joe figure for me, and he was bought new, and I played with him quite a bit. I have good old Sergeant Slaughter. Now, this is the peg version of him, not the mail-away version, and he was got later. I have the Triple T, but I have the mail-away version of the Triple T with the orange guns. We'll look at that at some point. It did not come with a Sergeant Slaughter figure. This was bought at a yard sale with none of the accessories, but hey, I have the Triple T and a Sergeant Slaughter, and it's one of the better Sergeant Slaughters. Gotta love Sarge. He was, my granddad watched professional wrestling. I did for a while. See, I used to sit in the basement of my granddad's house with him, and he would watch whatever wrestling came on. I remember the Four Horsemen. I think one of the earlier incarnations of the Four Horsemen, probably with the Crockett Promotions before it was WCW, and Granddad watching that, and that started my love of pro wrestling that continued on through the 90s into the 2000s, and at some point I stopped watching it, and I've tried to pick it up several times after that, but my heroes are long gone. Even the guys that I liked in the 90s are long gone. The guys I liked in the early 2000s are long gone. And yeah, the Sarge, man. I remember as a kid, I would be confused when Sergeant Slaughter came back. He had that whole thing where he was a Rocky sympathizer, which just, the less said about that, the better. But I remember once he turned back into a good guy, and I would watch him, and maybe reruns, if they ever did reruns of GI of professional wrestling. I remember asking someone, my mom or my granddad, I remember asking someone why the other G.I. Joes didn't come out and help him. I have Lifeline here. This is another one that I had as a kid. Got him new. What can I say? He was an early one. The reason he's in such good shape is because I didn't play with him very much. He was a doctor and bright red. He did get played with, don't get me wrong, but definitely not one of my favorites. Now, Low Light was a favorite of mine. He just looks cool with that red visor and his sniper rifle. He got played with quite a lot. He was another one of my early ones that I got new. Got Dial Tone here. He was one that I got from a yard sale or flea market, probably that flea market where a kid was selling his G.I. Joes. He did not come with any of his accessories, but you know, I was happy to have him as one of the originals, one of the classic G.I. Joes. Serpentor. He was one of my Christmas presents one year. Now, I think he was the mail away one, because I don't remember ever having his like robe thing. I think he was a mail away that was a Christmas present. I do have his chariot and his snakes and stuff, but yeah, Serpentor, I never liked him as much as Cobra Commander. They could have kept Cobra Commander. He was just unneeded, but you know, he was still kind of a cool character. Just, yeah. Bat. Battle Android Trooper. If not Hawk, this was my first G.I. Joe figure. I've had him for as long as I can remember. Played with him a lot. Next up, I have Quick Kick. Pretty good shape here. I think he was mail away. I don't think I got him new. Quick Kick, Pyramid of Darkness, you know, made a big impression. He was another one of my mom's favorites. His little jokes and stuff, she really liked him. Bazooka. He was a mail away, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think he got him off the pegs. Maybe my mom did. This was another one of my mom's favorites. She loved him in the show, how he was kind of dumb and funny and stuff. Partnered up with Alpine. Awesome figure. And, you know, I didn't have Zap, so, you know, had Bazooka. And he was my missile launcher guy for a long time. Finally, I have a version of Wild Bill, not the original version. I honestly don't remember where I got him from. I know I got him later, and I never really played with him. I think I bought him at the same time I got Snake Eyes here. Maybe the guy just gave him to me because I bought Snake Eyes. I don't know. He was one that I got far, far later, and when I was already out of G.I. Joe, and I got him just because I didn't have Wild Bill as a kid, and you know, I figured I would pick him up. Well, guys, those are my G.I. Joe figures. These were my treasures as a kid. Even with some of the 90s figures, as much as I disliked them at the time, they have grown on me. They're just from another time when life was easier. And, you know, I'm never going to be a big, well, unless I win the lottery or something, I'm never going to be a big G.I. Joe collector. It's just way out of my price range. My joke is, you know, I couldn't afford them back then, and nothing's changed. I can't afford them now. But I'm going to hold on to all of these because they were my childhood treasures. And if somehow, some way I ever find any of them out in the wild, at a flea market or a yard sale, and the very unlikely chance that somebody has them and doesn't know what they have and are selling them at a reasonable price, maybe I'll pick up some more. But I am not paying what people want on the collector's market. If I have to sell everything, these will be one of the last things that I sell. I loved them as a kid so much, and I cannot praise G.I. Joe enough. Going back later and reading some of the classic Marvel comic books, the G.I. Joe TV show, I still have kids, you know, when people, you know, talk to me about their kids, I tell them, go have them watch G.I. Joe. You know, it's a simple story with simple characters that's a lot of fun for a kid. I hope one day we really get G.I. Joe back. I would love to see a resurgence in G.I. Joe. You see it peak out once in a while with like the classic G.I. Joe releases that were out at Walmart a couple years ago. I have heard rumors that there's going to be an O figure line, that they're going to be brought back. I hope that's true. Maybe I'll pick up some of those if I do. I wanted to get the Awe Striker that was brought out a few years ago. I just was broke at the time and going through a job loss and didn't manage to pick it up, and still don't have me an Awe Striker. But anyway, let me know below, if you know who any of these G.I. Joe 90s guys are. Put it in the comments. I'll look them up at some point. And as always, I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come. Hello, this is Adam with Dream Made Productions. Thank you for watching my content. It really means a lot that you have given me the chance to entertain you. If you would like to support the channel, please visit my Patreon at patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Also below is a link for PayPal, or links if you would like to send crypto, if that's more your thing. Please know any amount that you give will be cherished and used to upgrade equipment and improve the channel. You can also help the channel by subscribing, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and sharing my channel with anyone you think might be interested. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come.